Hello, everyone, and welcome back to In the Chair with Dr. Gina Conversations Beyond the Chapter. This is episode 4. Before you build, listen. This conversation focuses on establishing a telehealth practice. What does that look like? Needs assessments, business planning protocols, workflows, marketing, sustainability, and growth. As I was looking over the chapter myself, I found myself thinking about something I've learned over and over and over again throughout my career. Most people think successful programs begin with excitement. 4:25 p.m. I don't think they do. I think successful programs begin with listening. Now, I realize that's not nearly as exciting. Nobody conducted an excellent needs assessment on an inspirational poster. Nobody posts on social media about spending 6 months gathering information before making a decision. What people post are launches, announcements, grand openings, success stories. But what they don't often see is the work that happened beforehand. The listening, the questioning, the curiosity. The willingness to discover that your brilliant idea might not actually be what people need. And that's harder than it sounds because when we get excited about something, we naturally want to start building. We want movement. We want action. We want progress. The textbook chapter talked a great deal about needs assessment, understanding who you're serving, what they need, where the gaps exist, and whether telehealth is the right solution. I think that principle applies to much more than telehealth. It applies to counseling. It applies to leadership. It applies to relationships. It applies to life. One of the biggest mistakes I've made over the years is assuming I knew what someone needed before I fully understood their situation. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I wasn't. And the older I get, the more I trust curiosity over certainty. In fact, when I think about some of the most successful things I've been involved with professionally, they all started with listening, not presenting, not teaching, not convincing, just listening. What are people struggling with? What are the barriers? What's missing? What isn't working? What might actually help? And then building from there. One of the things I appreciated about this chapter is that it reminded me that telehealth isn't about technology first. Telehealth is about solving a problem. Technology comes later. That's true of most meaningful work. The solution should emerge from the need, not the other way around. Now, if you've had me in another course or you've spent any time with me, you know Adler is patiently waiting in the corner of the room. Come on in, sir. One of the things Adler understood deeply is that most people are effective when they remain connected to the needs of the community around them. He called it social interest. His word, the German word, his native language, was Gemeinschaftsgefühl. And social interest is the closest we can get to in the English translation of the meaning of the word. It's a concern for the welfare of others, a willingness to contribute, a recognition that our lives are intertwined to some degree. And of course, when I read the chapter, that's the lens, that's what I hear underneath all of the business planning language. I hear a simple question: who are you trying to help? Once you answer that question, many of the other decisions become easier. Once you answer the question clearly of who you are trying to help, you begin figuring out how to develop relationships across your community, stakeholders, uh, attending to unmet needs in the community, developing services that address those needs. That's not just business planning, that's community engagement. I dare say social interest in action, listening before leading. Some of the most important professional lessons I've learned came from realizing that what I wanted to build and what people needed were not always the same thing. Sometimes the answer was yes, it's a go, move forward. Other times the answer was not yet, or not like this, or there's a better way. And that's valuable information too. Successful clinicians don't fall in love with solutions. They fall in love with understanding problems. Because if you understand the problem deeply enough, the solution begins to reveal itself. The assigned reading also discussed pilot programs and testing ideas before fully launching them in private practice, starting with a limited caseload, a limited number of sessions. I love that. Pilots require humility. A pilot says, I think this might work, not, I know this will work. And that mindset can save you from a lot of mistakes. How many times is our first version the final version? That's true in developing a practice. Sometimes piloting your ideas for a practice can teach you what maybe should have been built in the first place. That's not a failure. That's learning. That's listening. As counselors, we spend a lot of time helping clients tolerate uncertainty. Some of the best growth in your professional development will be in those moments where you're learning how to tolerate uncertainty yourself. And in the most authentic ways, you'll be able to model that to your clients. You'll be able to listen longer, hold silence longer, more Socratic probing, deeper levels, gather more information, remain curious. Let the need shape the response. And as you move through this week's material, your assignments, your reflections, I'd encourage you to think about this question. Before offering a solution, how do I make sure I truly understand the problem? Many of you know I pretend to be from another planet. And I tell my clients I do this because it keeps me honest, that I can't possibly be the expert of their planet, their lived experience, when I'm from a completely different planet. I find the metaphor opens the space for my curiosities and my Socratic probings as I gather information, and I work hard to never stand in the place of knowing as the expert of their lived experience. And so, because you're building a telehealth practice, developing your program, leading an organization, or helping a client create change. That question matters. The question, before I offer a solution, how do I know I truly understand the problem? Be well, and until next time, when I meet you back here in the chair.